This is looking very good. All right, I think we are ready to roll. So welcome everyone as we are in our 10th-ish month of 11th month, I think, for Jewish Wisdom for Coping with a Pandemic. We have been meeting on and off for quite a while, and I plan on being here for quite a while as this continues. We are wrapping up kind of the second go through of my book. Today we are starting the Soul Trait of Yirah, which is one of two. We're going to look at the fear portion today. And then next week, I thought since it's Purim, and for those of you who will be able to join us, we could do like a little mini Purim celebration. So I'm going to wear like a wig and maybe some other costume things. So you're invited to come in costume or a hat, and there's a couple of, we can look at both the soul traits of humility and generosity, which are big lessons in the book of Esther. And then after that, we'll probably do another week of Yirah, and then we're going to start on something new. And I'm currently leading towards a curriculum from IJS, the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, where they have a Tikkun Midot curriculum, which was developed by David Jaffe, which is really wonderful. So I think that's kind of what I am leaning towards, but I will keep you posted.
I have used that curriculum. It is good.
Yeah. I've learned from David and gotten to know him personally, and he's quite gifted. Wrote a wonderful book. Was it Changing the World from the Inside Out? Mm-hmm. So, but for today, let us get started by getting comfortable in our seats and getting ready for our meditation to create a sacred space together. So please close your eyes and get comfortable, and taking a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the mouth and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, imagine yourself in the ocean, bobbing up and down as the waves come in. And on the inhale, you float up the wave. And on the exhale, you float back down. Inhale, floating up. Exhale, floating down. If thoughts should enter into your mind, just observe them, like watching a cloud pass in the sky. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is float up on the wave on the inhale and float back down on the exhale. And on the next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're not giving advice. We're not judging. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. I want to give a special hello to David and Randy, who we haven't seen in a little while, so welcome back. It's nice to have you here. Thank you. I like that background too. It looks very, very, very comfortable outdoor porch there. I imagine it's pretty chilly where you are at the moment, but that looks nice. Well, friends, to get our discussion started, let's see, where am I going here? We're going here. So today, as we sort of going into we last couple of weeks, we've been talking about equanimity, and last week we were talking about worry and trying to find ways to overcome worry as we're dealing with and sort of getting back our equanimity. And today, as we start moving into Yirah and fear, I heard a great quote this morning, actually, from in the IJS morning meditation that I remember that I've survived 100% of my bad days. So I thought that could be kind of a nice starting point for us today. What does that sort of invoke for you? Has anyone here not survived their worst days?
Actually, that makes me think of the midah of trust too, because I've survived them all so far, I have trust in my own capabilities of getting through the next thing that happens. You know, enduring it, whether it turns out well or not.
Thank you, Gail. Other thoughts or reactions to this?
I recognize, that I could probably write many books about my 100 days of things, and but I started asking. I said, okay, everybody has a story, and so I started asking people what was it that they were experiencing in this 100 days, or with COVID and stuff, and the stories I was told paled my story. Yet I had felt that my story was, maybe, worthy. And I was so grateful that I had come through where I had come through, and these people as well. But it was humbling for me to recognize, that everybody has a story, and everybody, some stories are worse than others. But it made me have that awe moment in a sense.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, everybody has a story. And, if we can, yeah, Carol.
I like to joke that I'm planning on living forever, and so far it's working. I'm still here, so.
Well, Eckhart Tolle would say that if we live our lives truly in the moment and truly in the present, then it is forever, because we're not worried about the future or the past. He calls it the eternal now. So good job, Carol. Stick with the plan. It's working so far. Yeah, I think about, Shelley was making me think again about this image of the waves, and they sort of go up and down, and there's peaks and troughs, and depending on where we are, in our life, there are times where we're at the peak, and there are times where we're very much in the trough. And sometimes we're at the peak for a while, and sometimes we're in the trough for a while. But the way things progress, there is a pendulation that takes place. And I guess I thought this was a nice way to kind of remember that. Other thoughts before we move on? Oops.
perhaps after being in your worst place, there's growth, post-traumatic growth, resiliency. So you're never the same after the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A few years ago, it was maybe close to 10 years ago, I was down in a part of California called Big Sur, and there was a big wildfire there, and and we were hiking in areas where things had burned. And this was maybe 3 weeks after the fire. And out of these blackened branches, there were already green shoots that were coming out of them. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, there is a certain growth and resiliency, which is part of nature that happens. And so when we're sort of feeling scorched, we may not remember that, or we may not believe that, but and it's not particularly helpful to hear that necessarily either if we're really in one of the troughs. Well, things get better, you know. Well, maybe, yes, probably, but we also need to hold space for people who are, you know, experiencing challenges. Now, what we are talking about is, as we get into studying Yirah and the fear aspect of Yirah, the soul trait, or the assumption, which I think is useful to focus on, is this idea that we're driven by the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And as you may recall, the evil inclination, that's a lot of our reptilian brain impulses. It's a lot of our survival impulses. And it's where a lot of our sort of primal fears or reactive fears come from. And these neurons fire faster than other neurons. I mean, for millions of years, we've like survived because we've had the ability to see danger and be afraid and react to it. And as humans evolved, we developed a prefrontal cortex, and we developed additional instincts towards connection and community. And that's one of the hardest parts about COVID, is we just are not seeing other people as much as we would like to. And as much as Zoom is a lifeline, I don't think it's the same as being like in the same physical space with someone. Even though your conversation might be exactly the same, I think there's just something additional that happens when we're in the same room, when we're in the same physical space with someone else. So being able to kind of recognize and distinguish between, you know, to kind of forgive ourselves for having these fear impulses, and at the same time recognizing that we have the ability to channel them, to transform them, to overcome them, I think is a very powerful step on the journey. Any thoughts about this, or any ways that this relates to kind of your life as you've experienced it?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
I know that during the whole pandemic, and given a year now, the concept of fear has changed a lot, because, you know, in the beginning I was feeling a whole lot of fear from all different aspects of my life. And every decision you had to make, that fear, that risk was involved in that. And it's changed some as it's gone on, as you get accustomed to living in a certain way. But, you know, fear was definitely prevalent.
Thank you, David. Randy, did I see you earlier? Yes.
Yeah, I had maybe a funny story to share when I think about, you know, like fearful experiences. My daughter, when she was maybe 10, I'm not a real adventurous person, and she, is, and she wanted to go on roller coasters. And I remember when we went to Great America, they had this wooden roller coaster called the Roar. And it wasn't my idea of things, you know, and it goes click, 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 you know, that anxiety inside, you know, it gets, because you know what's going to happen, you know, and you're going up there to the top. But there is a way of, how can I say? Because they call it the roar, because when you get to the top, you're supposed to, you know, like raise your hands, let go of your fear and enjoy the ride. And it's like that idea of awe, and, you know, it's what you hold on to. The latest thing she said, she wanted to learn to ride motorcycles, and it's the same thing, that you go where you're looking at. If you are going to make a turn, you have to not look what's in front of you. You have to look where you want to go. And it's just, I mean, yes, there's many things that are difficult in life, and things painful beyond belief, but there's things that are such beauty that, and wonder, you know. I think that's in that word, it has both things. Maybe we can't look at the fullness of either one, but certainly we have to reach out for what's, I mean, isn't that what Mussar is all about? To reach out for what's good, even if it means letting go of things we're more comfortable with, or they come easier.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Thank you. A great example there. Joanne, did I see your hand?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking in the beginning of COVID, how everybody was like washing their groceries like mad. And, you know, we were really so paranoid. And I always went to the supermarket. I mean, a couple of times I ordered delivery, but mostly I went because I like to shop. And it was like an event, you know, and going outside and doing something. I mean, I also took some walks, and went to the botanic garden. But in the beginning, I remember being like so fearful of, you know, my groceries and everything. And thank God, you know, I got through, and I think we're getting used to it, I guess, in a sense. But no, we still have to take precautions. And I guess what I also wrote to you is like when I had cancer, I was extraordinarily fearful. And, you know, I relied on some other people to help me get through that, and also some prayer, and that helped. And I guess you can see maybe fear can become awe when you get through it, you know. And I don't know. The only other aside I have is that I lived in Coney Island as a child, and I loved roller coasters. And the last time I went on as an adult, I mean, what I really loved so much was the freedom to scream at the top of my lungs. It was such a release. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. And I guess I heard 3 ways of overcoming fear, and I hope I can remember them. One is sort of implicit is knowledge. We knew so little about COVID at the beginning, but like everything was like, oh, the groceries are danger, is this a danger, is that a danger? Plus we couldn't get masks. We didn't know if masks help. So just gaining more knowledge can sort of help. Second was prayer, was something that helped. And the third was reaching out to other people. There's sort of all tools in the spiritual medicine cabinet that we could use to draw on to help us combat fear. Let's see what else we have in that medicine cabinet. We're going to be looking multiple times at an article from Rabbi Judith Siegal that is in the Mussar Torah commentary. So for our first part, may I have a volunteer to read this, please? out loud would be preferred.
Okay, I will. Though Yirah can describe the unified fear-awe experience, the term can also be used for the singular experiences of fear and awe.
Okay, so
duty-
let's just pause there.
Okay.
So at a lot of places in the Hebrew text, you'll see like Yirah Adonai, you know, the fear of God, or Yirah this or Yirah that. And so what does it mean that it can be a unified fear-awe experience versus a singular experience?
Something that takes your breath away, but gives you inspiration at the same time. I think I've heard the expression at the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. It can be sort of terrifying and sort of takes your breath away, or sort of energizing at the same moment. Yes. Thank
When I was younger, I used to, as you all know, I'm a horse person. I used to jump. And jumping is very scary, but there's a thrill to it. I always said when it's right, it's the closest thing to flying without wings. But there, as you come up on that jump, there's this sense of, oh my God, what if I hit the jump? What if I fall off? And I did fall off a few times, not fun. And then you go over it and it's like, wow. But there's that fear element. I mean, I'm sure people who are really experienced at it kind of get past that. But then when they see that great big fence, they probably get it all over again.
Thank you. Yeah, it reminds me of my experiences skiing, you know, where I was never a great skier, but I'm on top of the very steep hill and it's like, I am terrified. And then if I could just start, you know, almost like Randy was saying, I just start looking where I'm going to go instead of down at my skis and just sort of go for it and let go, then it becomes this exhilaration. But it is really borderline between the two.
I'd like to add, one of the things that they say is when you jump, to throw your heart over first, and everything else, the horse and you will follow.
I like that.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, Carol, please continue reading.
The duties of the heart make this very point. The fear of heaven has two aspects: the fear of tribulations and divine retribution, and the awe of his glory, majesty, and awesome power.
Great. Thank you. So let me see where was I going next here? Okay. So we have sort of two aspects here. There's this sort of fear of divine retribution and awe of the divine power. Now, we in this group may be all over the place in terms of what we think about, you know, the divinity, and, you know, for many, you know, this idea of divine retribution or divine power, those may not be sort of in our usual vocabulary. So curious, like, what do you make of this? Is there anything here that's, does it just become eye roll territory, or is there something that maybe, you know, you take away from this? Harry, I didn't know if you were raising your hand or just scratching your forehead there.
Stuck.
I've never had divine retribution, so it's hard for me to connect to that, that fear. But
Yeah.
I sort of get where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that I don't really buy into the divine retribution aspect of things, but you know, the fear of not living up to who I want to be and what I want to be, and is probably where that jumps into me in a spiritual way.
Yeah, thank you, David. So maybe it's not the retribution, but it's like, well, I certainly don't want to let myself down. I don't want to, not live up to being the person that I would like to be. And the way that I tried to transform the fear of divine retribution into kind of a fear of consequences, where part of the idea was, it's almost like the Santa Claus. It's like, if you're bad, you're not going to get your toys, and we don't need to be on a mystical level to understand that if we treat people poorly, relationships are going to suffer, and if we steal from our employer, we may be caught and lose our job and go to jail. So it's this idea that there should be a healthy respect for consequences. So let's continue kind of with that sort of in mind. Let's just take a quick look at the spectrum when we look at the fear of consequences. What happens when we're out of balance, kind of at the extremes here?
Fear consequences.
Joanne, did you want to comment?
Well, what came to mind is this saying, the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord,
Mhm.
but maybe even just fear of the consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a
actually,
balanced way to be. But if you're paralyzed, you can't get anything done. And if there's too little, then I don't know, maybe you put yourself in harm's way, or you put yourself in the way of a bad outcome.
yeah, thank you. That's well said. And actually, that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or fear of heaven is the beginning of wisdom. That was sort of what kind of led me down this path of what should we be afraid of, and it became fear of consequences. Fear. And what does it mean to fear consequences but not action? What is that aimed at?
I'm not sure.
I think it means you did something wrong. You don't know how you're going to be punished, but you're going to be punished. So there's going to be a consequence, but you can't really pin it down. But when something bad will ultimately happen to you, you'll say, I just received my punishment for the consequence. I don't know if that sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, I certainly think that sometimes when something bad happens, we like to try to tie it to something. It's like, oh, this must be because I did A, B, or C. And sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it's our imagination. I was also thinking about sort of the risk-averse side. Like sometimes people are afraid to kind of apply for a job because they're afraid they might not get the job, or they're afraid to kind of take action. And that we don't want to kind of become paralyzed by our fears. So it's like, we don't want to be afraid of taking the action. It's sort of like, yeah, okay, at least if I can own I'm afraid I might get rejected. Yeah, Carrie.
I was thinking as an artist who enters shows, as juried shows, there is a fear of being rejected, but you keep doing it because it's a crapshoot anyway, and you learn not to take the rejection personally.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And that's a really important point, to depersonalize it. I'm going to apply to the show because that's kind of a way for people to see the art, or maybe that's part of the business. And if it gets rejected, well, that's not an indictment of me and my vision. It's just a lack of a fit with the show, or it was a decision by someone else about the piece of art, not about me. Thank you. Other tactics that people have maybe for overcoming like a paralyzing fear, or a fear of rejection, or something that might keep you from taking action.
Well, you think about the alternative. What if you don't try?
Hmm.
And that sometimes is worse than trying, whatever it might be.
I think the idea of knowledge is very helpful. When I was teaching, we used to do this thing where we'd look at what, and we'd have the children do the same thing, make a list of the benefits and the burdens of whatever action it's going to be. How will this benefit me? What burden do I have to bear in order to do this? I want to go to the store and buy this. I need to go earn the money. Whatever. I mean, that's really, really oversimplified. But let's, if I tell my friend that I don't like this, what's going to happen, and what's going to happen if I don't tell him or her?
Yeah, that's a great analysis from both of you. It reminds me of something I wrote about in the Enthusiasm chapter, which is the famous Woody Allen statement, 80% of life is just showing up. And the context for that was people all the time would come up to him and say, how do I get my screenplay turned into a movie? He'd say, oh, well, have you written the screenplay yet? And they would say, no. It's like, okay, well, the first step is you need to write the screenplay. If you don't take that first step, and then you got to send it to someone. So if you don't make the painting, if you don't write the email or pick up the phone call and invite someone out to coffee, it's never going to happen. So we just have to kind of to be there. And I think this idea of, we don't want to fear the action. It's like, okay, well, rejection's no fun, but never having tried, almost to what David said earlier, never living up to what could be, is even can be even more painful. All right, so let's look at our next piece of text here. So this is sort of a long reading, but could someone please volunteer to read this?
Many Mussar teachers encourage us to orient ourselves toward the side of fear, especially of divine retribution for our transgressions.
I will pause you here. And this is really true if you read a lot of the 19th century and earlier Mussar literature. They're just all over the sphere of heaven and this and that. And many of the more modern Mussar teachers don't kind of pick up on this. I think within the Orthodox world, they still do, but in the sort of liberal Mussar traditions, they don't. But, as we talked about before, that's not something that many of us relate to, but it is sort of one common path. Okay, Joanne, please continue.
However, Jacob is a model of another kind of Yirah. Jacob is fearful, and rightly so. Not only has he done wrong in the eyes of God, but he has wronged his brother, who may understandably be hurt and angry with him. Jacob moves beyond his fear, symbolized by the wrestling he does with the man, perhaps his conscience, throughout the night. When we have wronged someone, we too must take that fear of what may become of us, either through divine punishment or the anger of the person we have harmed, and turn it into something more productive. Rabbi Judith Siegal in the Mussar Torah commentary.
Yeah, thank you. So she is writing about the Jacob story. And so they're referring to element of the story. So just for a quick review, there's one whole set of stories where Jacob like steals his birthright from his brother Esau, and he tricks his father into giving him the blessing that he was going to give to Esau. And when Esau found out, he was devastated and was really angry, and Jacob runs away and flees for his life. So in part of the story, he's getting ready to see Esau again after a few decades, and so he's afraid of that. And then sort of during this time, he's visited by this you know, divine being during the night, and they wrestle, and that's where he actually is named Israel. And throughout the book, like whenever Jacob's higher self is in play, he's referred to as Israel. And whenever he's kind of being fearful or constricted, he's called Jacob. So given all of that, what is some of the messages that you sort of take from Rabbi Siegal's teaching here? Janet, any thoughts? I see you sitting forward a little bit. I don't know if that's just coincidence or if you are engaged with this a little bit. Sorry, you're on mute.
I really can't address that right now.
Okay,
I have something to say.
sure.
I know I talk too much, but sorry. But I know in the story of Jacob, when he finally is going to confront his brother, this is after he wrestled with what I've also heard was is his brother's angel, you know, Esau's angel. So maybe he's ready now to, you know, he has no choice anyway, because Esau is coming to him with like 400 or 500 men with him, like an army. And he does all this like bowing and supplicating, and he divides his family up. So, you know, if something bad happens, it doesn't happen to all of them at once. And he sends 1 million gifts. So he's really trying to compensate for what he did in the past and make amends. And so, you know, I think, well, he wrestled with whatever his conscience or, you know, whatever was advocating for his brother. And I guess realized that things might go really badly, but he has to do this, you know, this is the next step. And actually his brother greets him and hugs him and, you know, is very happy to see him. So it works out, thank God.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. I mean, this reminds me of something that happened within the last few weeks, and I may have shared it here, where kind of out of the blue, I got an email from someone who's one of my classmates and said, hey, a year ago you said something which really upset me and bothered me. And so I apologized by email and I arranged to talk by phone, but there was about a day where I really had to think about it and kind of wrestle with my conscience and to think about, yeah, what I'd said was a little, you know, I certainly didn't realize it had the impact on them that it did. But what I said was a little bit, you know, I didn't put a lot of thought into it. Maybe it was a little bit aggressive. Maybe, you know, it certainly wasn't as kind as it should have been. So this process of kind of wrestling with my conscience or sort of thinking about it and really taking a look and seeing how, you know, the mistake that I've made and how I could do better, I think is painful, but is also very, very healthy. And I'm wondering if, you know, maybe part of the danger of fear is that we can become paralyzed and not do that sort of wrestling. You know, that we become defensive and we shy away, and it's like, you know, oh, what's your problem? You know, what's the big deal? It was a year ago, what have you. I mean, there's lots of ways that my Yetzer Hara, my evil inclination, would have been perfectly willing to just, you know, dismiss the whole thing and not sort of create that kind of repair and connection that did take place. So is that part of the picture, sort of fear preventing us maybe from reconciliation?
Well, you know, in that story, in the Jacob story, I think his fear was of survival and not, I question whether there was reconciliation, because after that point, when Esau invites him to come together, he goes the other way. And, they really, I don't see the reconciliation. I don't see him really dealing with Esau, what he did to have that fear, to bring him to that point. So, in your story, people are dealing with the situation of what really happened, as opposed to just a survivalist type of situation.
Yeah, David, great point. There were steps that Jacob could have taken beyond what we saw in the story. So yeah, there wasn't sort of a reconciliation. They didn't exchange email addresses. They didn't, stay in touch. They didn't continue to form a relationship. They didn't battle, but they certainly didn't come to full reconciliation. So yeah, thank you. All right, well, let's get ready to split into our pairs today. And so, I decided to quote myself here. Always a safe bet to quote yourself. You're guaranteed to agree with it unless you change your mind. So what I wrote was, I have no doubt that if you live a life making your best efforts to live up to Jewish values, you'll have a better life than if you ignore them. Each day we are faced with choice points where we have the opportunity to take the path of least resistance or to take the higher road. It's kind of interesting, if we again, to David's question, if we look at how did Jacob show up with Esau, where was he on that sort of continuum from path of least resistance to taking the higher road? So I guess for you, is fear or awe a better approach to help you take the higher road? And together, maybe can you write like a mantra or a prayer or a kavanah to kind of help you kind of engage in taking this higher road in a given situation? So let me open the breakout rooms. All right, and you'll have maybe like 5 or 6 minutes to discuss. And of course, you may check in with where you are as well. Okay, so let's, I will see you in a few. Joanne, do you see your button to join the breakout room? So you are on mute, I can't hear you. I think you may have joined. Okay. Well, for those of you who are streaming, this is where the live portion of the broadcast ends. I want to thank you for being here today. We are here every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. I invite you to go to the American Mussar Facebook page or to the AmericanMussar.com website, where you can sign up to be on the email list to get the bi-weekly email prompts, as well as the Zoom link, so to join and be interactive. So with that being said, thanks so much, and I'm going to end the stream. We should get everybody else back in about 10 seconds or so.
How have you been, Greg? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there. You know, or as I think as someone said, phrase someone introduced my family to, I'm COVID okay. You know, I'm like, okay, given what's going on in the world. So thank you for asking. All right, so I would love to hear, did anyone come up with any kind of mantras or approaches or advice that they would like to share with the group? Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, I think Eileen and I came up with a really fun little mantra. And it's finding the positive even when there's fear. Find the fun in fear.
Find the fun in fear.
And that's what I'm doing now, because I have now come up with between about 6 and 8 songs that I've composed. And a friend of mine a friend and a family member have encouraged me to do open mic, and I'm scared to death. So why can't I find the fun and the fear to actually perform my songs in an open mic?
I love it. That is great. That's like the skiing analogy, you know, except even scarier. But yes, wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else come up with anything that they would care to share? Randy, yes.
Yeah, Joanne and I were talking, and she asked me to share that it sort of went something like this: try something new, see the beauty around us.
Try something new and see the beauty around us. I love it. Thank you. Carol.
Well, Gail and I talked a lot about how we both are dealing with a lot of fear, but that awe really works a little bit better, and to hold on to the wonder. Just hold on to the wonder, and that's the mantra we came up with.
Hold on to the wonder. Great. If I might ask everyone to just type these in the chat after you share it, just so we can kind of all see them and remember them. I like them all. Okay. Anyone else have one to anything they would like to share? Shelley. Shelley, you're on mute.
I was going to say, we both have had a similar experience, and we both came up with, she came up with it, and I love it, is the song Staying Alive, and then dancing to it and saying staying alive, and you know, it has both meanings for us, and I thank her for that, because you know, finding the joy somewhere is an important thing.
Yes, thank you. Staying alive. Yeah. That's pretty simple. Joanne, was that your hand, or were you just?
Yeah, I had something from a long ago therapy group. My therapist said, feel the fear, but do it anyway. You know, and I guess that's kind of that roller coaster, or doing something else new that is you're afraid to do, you know.
Yes, yes, Janet.
I have something to say, which is not what came up. I had my adult bat mitzvah in 1998, and people would tell me, don't be nervous. Well, nobody feels unnervous by having someone tell them not to be nervous. What worked for me was enjoy the experience, enjoy the stay.
Yeah, enjoy the experience. I love that. You know, there's a movie, a Tom Cruise movie. It's called Edge of Tomorrow, where he's caught in this time loop, where there's various battle he has to keep refighting, and there's some, you know, very stereotypical sergeant who's giving everyone a pep talk, and It says, you know, it's okay to be afraid. There's no courage without fear. And, you know, that's really true. You know, fear is not something, and I think trying to repress the fear is not a good way to go, because it just comes out in other ways. So enjoying the experience or doing it anyway, you know, those are ways that can sort of transform it, or at least prevent it from paralyzing us. Yeah, if there's a raging forest fire, the fear should paralyze you and prevent you from running into the woods. But our subconscious can't tell the difference between a raging forest fire and public speaking, you know, so we sometimes need some of these tools to kind of help us cope. Well, friends, in our last couple of minutes, I just wanted to share with you just some words from Orchat Tzaddikim, The Path of the Righteous, which is a medieval Mussar book, probably written by a woman because it was anonymous, and it was written in Yiddish, and the author made cooking analogies. So it's very unlikely that a man would write in Yiddish, not in Hebrew, and would know anything about cooking, you know, from this timeline. So can I just have a volunteer to read these? There are 4 things that we should worry about. Eileen, we haven't heard much from you today. Would you mind reading these? You're on mute currently.
Sorry. 1, wise in Torah must worry that his deeds are not commensurate with his wisdom. 2, and if he is not wise, he must worry that not having the ability to probe his spiritual curriculum. 3, if he is honored, he must be heedful, not to rejoice in that honor. And 4, if he is wise and yet despised in the eyes of the world, he should worry that being despised will prevent people from accepting his advice. Ways of Tzaddikim.
Thank you.
His is there, but
What's that?
too many male.
Yes, I was just realizing that I need to regender this.
Yes.
Yes. So I apologize for not doing that, and I will after the call, so that when I go back to the slide in the future, it will already be done. But if we can, in our own minds, regender this, I think that there's a picture that's painted of living the world kind of with a certain level of humility, without getting too big for our britches, or not becoming too arrogant. And I sort of can see myself, and I'll see mistakes that I've made at various points in almost every line. So I think that's something for us, you know, as we are, you know, taking action in the world. And if we do find ourselves worried or fearful, maybe we can, you know, say, well, do the things that we're afraid of, do they match anything on this list? And if not, maybe we can try to, you know, use that as one possible measuring stick. So friends, right now, let us close our eyes as we close our space for today. I'm just going to take a quick peek at these. Okay, so the mantra that I was looking for that I really liked was hold on to the wonder. So let's close our eyes. Taking a deep breath and hold. And then exhale through the mouth. And on your next inhale, think to yourself, hold on to the wonder. Notice the light that's filtering through your eyelids. This is the light of your divine spark. Allow that light to be a bridge to wonder. Something that's always with you and always accessible. Even in this moment when it seems like it's the farthest thing from us in the world. And just saying that mantra, hold on to the wonder, can help us reconnect. Now tilt your head back and open your jaw and smile. Let us take a moment of gratitude, this hour of community together. As we go forth in for this week, may we hold on to the wonder. Well, friends, thank you so much. I hope we will see you next week for Purim in costume or wearing a silly hat if you wish. Don't let that prevent you from coming if you're not able to. Ivy, I'm glad you could join us at least for the end today. So I did remember to record this week, so this will be up on the YouTube channel. And
Thank you.
if you get a chance, take a peek at that video link I sent you too. It's something which I think is pretty special. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.